Hello, I'm Laura McInerney, co-founder of Teacher Tapp, the app that asks thousands of teachers 3 daily questions so you can find out what's really going on the ground in schools. We've teamed up with the guys from InnerDrive to bring you InnerTapp, where we look at what teachers are thinking and what the research is saying about key topics in education. Today, we're going to look at the topic of CPD, continuous professional development. Not in an abstract, wouldn't it be nice if way, but instead looking at what teachers actually experience and what we need to do about it. Because whether you're a classroom teacher or running a trust, everyone needs to keep learning. But if CPD feels pointless, then people disengage, and that's a problem. Plus, what we know is that teachers who say they feel they've improved as a teacher are far more likely to be looking forward to their next school year. INSET days, or in-service training days to give the full title, are the slivers of time, usually 5 each year, when schools train teachers. When we asked people in schools about their last INSET day, 58% of head teachers said it was very useful. But for classroom teachers, the figure was only 13%. Why the discrepancy? For heads, their concerns on INSET days are mainly about statutory requirements, the legally required training that teachers must do on, for example, safeguarding or compliance policies. It's the leader's job to make sure it gets done. Unfortunately, classroom teachers at the same time are sitting there thinking, I could be using this time to plan tomorrow's lessons. It isn't about teachers being negative, it's a structural mismatch between needs. 88% of classroom teachers sat through a head teacher briefing in their INSET, but only 27% wanted one. 81% had statutory training, only 22% wanted one. In other words, INSET is good at ticking statutory boxes, but it's less good at developing classroom practice. So if INSET days aren't landing as the best CPD, what do teachers actually want to learn? When we ask, it becomes very clear that they're interested in number 1, subject knowledge, and number 2, instructional techniques. But here's the tricky bit. When we ask teachers about their own weaknesses, they usually say behaviour and SEND, not subject knowledge or even classroom instruction. Yet given the choice, they'll pick subject knowledge CPD most of the time, not behaviour, not SEND. This isn't irrational. People prefer doing things they already feel good at. But it does mean CPD choices can reinforce existing strengths rather than addressing weaknesses. And that's a big reason why dissatisfaction is so high. Teachers know behaviour is a problem, they just don't believe CPD will help fix it. In fact, only 4% of teachers believe behaviour management training would significantly improve their expertise. This could be because they've experienced behaviour training before but struggled to successfully implement it. A reason for this may be because it's harder to overcome our weaknesses quickly, and so a single one-off session is less effective than topping up on one of our strengths. So, if you're offering behaviour CPD, step 1 is fixing that belief. If teachers don't think it'll work, they will not engage, no matter how good the content is. But here's the silver lining. Teachers aren't cynical about CPD as a concept. Most believe it could help, they just haven't seen it done well yet. Only 10% of teachers strongly agree that recent CPD helped their teaching. But if you ask about the future, optimism goes up. In fact, most teachers agree that future professional development will help them become a better teacher, even though hardly any of them have experienced it recently. This optimism provides an opportunity. Teachers want CPD that's useful, specific, and immediately applicable. Not vague strategies, not tick box sessions. And as we've said, when teachers feel they're improving, data suggests they're more motivated and they are more likely to stay in the job. Of course, it's not just about perception. There is plenty of research on what makes CPD genuinely effective. So to round us off, here's Bradley from InnerDrive with the evidence on what good CPD actually looks like.
Let's start by exploring just how important staff development is, before then moving on to some key principles of effective CPD. In a seminal study, researchers found that typically teachers make huge improvements in the first 3 years, before the rate of improvement slows down quite a bit. If the school didn't really value professional development, the path follows a similar route, with vast improvement early on, before plateauing soon after. But what if the school had a strong professional environment? Well, the researchers found that after 10 years, the difference between that group and the weakest group was a huge 39%. So what makes good CPD? To answer that, we can turn to a surprising source for an indication of how not to do it. Fans of Batman are well versed in the origin of the main character. A young Bruce Wayne sees his parents murdered, and in that one moment, his life takes a hugely different path. Without it, he would never have eventually assumed his superhero persona. This is not too dissimilar to the story of Archimedes, jumping out of the bath, shouting Eureka at the realisation of how buoyancy worked. Both of them relied on a one-off event leading to long-lasting change. However alluring the idea of a Batman or Archimedes moment may be, the reality of a day-to-day improvement is typically quite different. Old habits die hard. Change can be slow and small. So what does that mean for staff development sessions? Introducing a new idea or concept can provide a spark of inspiration. It can enthuse and motivate a desire to travel down a different path. But that spark of initial enthusiasm requires a different type of fuel to sustain the fire. So what does that look like in action? The Education Endowment Foundation, in their Effective Professional Development Guidance Report, highlighted 4 main strategies that will help teachers make the most out of their training days. These are 1. Building their knowledge, 2. Motivating them, 3. Developing teacher techniques, and 4. Embedding practice. Let's take a look at that latter one, embedding practice. The Education Endowment Foundation states that embedding practice composes of 4 different levers, and we're going to take a look at each of them in turn. Providing prompts and cues. Frustratingly, we all have short working memories, which means we forget things at a far quicker rate than we'd like or often realise. Providing follow-up prompts or reminders can really help with this. For a long-term goal to be achievable, it needs a plan. Action plans help staff turn the abstract into something tangible and concrete. The Education Endowment Foundation give an example of this when they talk about using time within a CPD session to plan where to use a particular strategy in an upcoming lesson. Encouraging monitoring. Self-monitoring describes the process of regulating your actions, thoughts, and emotions to help you achieve a goal. It is a key ingredient that is essential for success in professional development, as it ensures that people stay on track with their action plans. Prompting context-specific repetition. Repeated practice is essential for improvement. This means giving staff time and space to implement new ideas and techniques in their classroom. The big elephant in the room is there's little time spare in education. It would be lovely if Batman moments did exist when it comes to CPD, but the reality is there are no shortcuts when it comes to continued development. And that embedding period, often overlooked, may well be one of the most important levers we have to make professional development stick.
So, to sum up, CPD feels pointless when it's not designed with the end user in mind. It needs to feel useful to be useful. Heads have statutory boxes to tick, that's for sure. But if CPD never addresses what teachers actually need in the classroom, it's not professional development, it's admin. The good news is teachers still want to improve. They're not the problem is bad CPD. The solution? Make it specific, make it practical, and above all, make it worth their time and their while.